Hello everybody and welcome back to American Textbook Reading. I'm Brian Stuart and in this lesson we're taking a look at Science Book 4, Lesson 10, The Moon, Planets, and Stars. So we're leaving Earth. Okay, so in this unit we will discover phases of the moon and we will also discover what the solar system is. And you'll notice this picture here, I believe it's in your book, and I'm going to talk about something here, but notice this, Pluto. We'll talk about that in the lesson. Okay. First word in our vocabulary is shine. Shine means to reflect or to send out light. What's the difference? Reflect means if you have an object and it doesn't give light off, right? But this is a black surface, so it's not very good. So let's say it's a shiny surface, right? And the light hits it, and the light coming from another source hits it and bounces back to you. That's reflect. But if the object, now the object is sending out light, okay? So in both cases, they shine, right? Whether the object is sending out light or if it's just reflecting, in both cases, they shine because you can see the light that is coming from them, whether the light is generated there or if it's just being reflected off of that object. Okay, so to shine. Ring. I have a ring, okay? A ring, of course, is a circular shape, and there's a hole in the middle, of course, so you can put your finger around it or inside of it. But of course, in this case, we have a planet inside of a ring. A ring is the small pieces of matter that circle a planet. What famous planet in our solar system has a ring? Actually, there are a few planets, but the most famous one is Saturn. Saturn has a very amazing and colorful ring around it, and it really puzzled early astronomers who looked at it in a telescope. Like, what is that thing? Does it have ears? What's going on? So finally they figured out it's a ring, and it's just small pieces of rocks and ice that are circling the planet. Just like the moon circles our planet, except imagine the moon is broken up into tiny little pieces and makes a ring all the way around the planet. Okay. Phase. We saw that word in the introduction to this lesson, and what is phase? A phase is the changes in the shape of the moon as seen by us. Of course, if you go out at night and you look at the moon, sometimes it's a perfect white circle shining in the sky. It's not giving off light, it's reflecting light from the sun, but still shining, right? And sometimes you go out at night and the moon is just a little sliver of light. Now, the changes, when it goes from a full circle of light to no light and then comes back, we call those the phases of the moon. It looks like the moon is changing shape. Not really, it's just the way that the light is reflecting off the moon. So the changes in the shape of the moon as seen by us, because we're on Earth, right? If we were in outer space in a spacecraft, maybe we wouldn't see these changes. Depends on where we are. Okay. Telescope. A telescope, now this is a very expensive telescope. Not many people have one of these, but you can buy a cheaper telescope that can enable you to see really far away. So if your friend is on the other side of a very big parking lot from you, you can look at the telescope and they seem very big in the telescope. But of course, you can look at the stars and at the sky with a telescope. And this is a very powerful telescope, which astronomers use to study things that are very, 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 very far away in the night sky. So a device that makes things far away look bigger. Okay. Next, we have constellation. That's a little difficult pronunciation, right? Constellation. So 4 syllables. Constellation. Constellation is a group of stars which form a pattern and have a name. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors looked up in the sky and they saw these lights shining in the black of the sky. And as they looked, they said, hey, wait a minute, those stars over there, they didn't know they were stars, those lights look like a shape, right? What is that shape? And their imagination said, oh, that looks like a lion, that looks like a hunter, that looks like a scorpion, right? And so these shapes, they gave them names, right? A Leo, Orion, Scorpio. They gave these groups of patterns, these groups of lights in the sky, they patterned them in their mind, and they gave them names to represent mythical or legendary characters or creatures in their stories, in their myths, and in their legends. And so we have a lot of different types of constellations, and you can see them here. And many of them, of course, have names. And different cultures might have different names for them. Now, of course, that's just how we see them from Earth. If you moved to another star system, it would all be different, right? Okay, or if you moved to another place in the galaxy, all these constellations would change. It's only from our perspective on Earth that we see these shapes. Now, we have solar system, the sun and all the planets that go around it. So, of course, we have the sun here, and you can see the orbits of all the planets. We have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, some people call it Uranus, Neptune, and then we have Pluto. And I said before, wait a minute, that's an interesting point, because nowadays, astronomers do not regard Pluto as a planet. Okay, we'll see that in the next section. We'll talk about the different planets of the solar system. So I'll touch upon that point soon. Okay, one of the main ideas in this unit is the phases of the moon. And as I said before, we see the moon in different shapes depending on where the moon is in the sky in relation to the sun, and of course to our position on Earth. So we have these, what we call new moon. It's not a new moon. It's been there for billions of years. Okay, it's not new, but it looks like it's new because, well, we can't see it. It's black. And why is it black? Because imagine that the sun, okay, in this picture, it looks like, well, okay. Imagine that the sun is over here. Okay, so if the sun is over here, it's shining light at the Earth. It's making this part of the moon very bright, but we don't see any of that light. If you're up here, you won't see the moon because all the light is shining on the moon this way, and the rest of the moon is dark, okay? To us. Of course, the moon is always lit by the sun, but if we're here and the sun is here, we can't see the moon. But imagine if the moon is over here, right? And of course, as long as the Earth isn't in the way of the sun, that would be an eclipse, but that's something different. Okay, so if the moon is over here on this side and the sun is over here, and of course it would be night on this part, then we can see the moon in all its glory, in very bright white, and it's a circle, a perfect circle in the sky. Now, if the sun is only shining part of the moon, right, we can see only maybe half of the moon. And the same thing over here, because the moon has these different cycles. As the moon orbits throughout the month and the Earth turns and also orbits, we see different phases of the moon. We don't see different parts of the moon. We always see the same part of the moon, actually. That's another interesting point. But anyway, we see the different shadows or reflections of the light on the moon. So we have new moon, then we have the first quarter moon. So the moon, we can see like a quarter of the moon. Quarter means 1/4, right? Then we can see the full moon, then we see the last quarter moon, and then it goes back to a new moon. So actually, it looks like this diagram is going this way. And as it says here, the moon rotates. Rotates means it is rotating, yes, but it's also orbiting around the Earth. I would say it orbits. I'm not sure rotate is the best word here. Orbits. The moon orbits around the Earth in about 29 days. That's a month, okay? And that's interesting because, again, a long time ago, our ancestors, thousands of years ago, of course, they watched the moon and they divided the time of the year into 12 different periods that they called months, because that's about how many times the Earth will go around the Earth in the period of 1 year. So about 12 times that the moon will rotate or orbit, or orbit is a better word, orbit around the earth in 1 year. 12 times, so divide the year into 12 months. It's not perfect, right? Sometimes we have to adjust it, but it's pretty close. Okay, and of course we talk about the phases of the moon. Whether it's a new moon, you cannot see the moon. It's black, so we can't see it. And then sometimes it grows slightly. It's a little bit, 1/8, then 1/4, then we can see half the moon, then 3/4 of the moon, then a full moon. It's very bright, and you can walk around at night without a flashlight. You can see because the moon's giving us a lot of light. It's actually giving us the sunlight reflecting off the moon, and then it turns back into the black moon that we cannot see the reflection of the sun off it anymore. And that's what happens during the month. Okay. Next, we have the solar system. Now you can see here on this picture, right? We see Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. Where's Pluto? Pluto's gone, okay? We only have 8 planets. Now that's interesting because when I was growing up, when I was a kid, we said there were 9 planets. But then a very bad man named Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson took Pluto away. No, I'm just kidding. Dr. Tyson is a very popular and entertaining astronomer, and he jokes about this sometimes too, that people blame him for the fact that astronomers no longer consider Pluto as a planet. But I have a lot of respect for Dr. Tyson. I really like him. He's a great astronomer. He's a great educator. But anyway, and of course, it wasn't his decision either. It was a group of astronomers. Why did they do that? Because a long time ago when Pluto was discovered, the astronomers that discovered Pluto by looking through telescopes, they only saw Pluto. They didn't realize that there were a lot of other objects out there. And nowadays, with better technology and better tools, astronomers have found there are a lot of objects like Pluto way out on the edge of the solar system. And Pluto is more like them than Pluto is like a planet. So that's why they said, oh, Pluto really shouldn't be considered as a planet. It's more like these other objects that are out there. So we no longer count Pluto as a planet. Don't blame Dr. Tyson. I was just kidding. Okay, so anyway, what are the planets? You probably learned these in school. Mercury, we think about Mercury as the first planet because it's closest to the sun. Mercury is a really hot, hellish place. You could not live on the surface of Mercury because it's so close to the sun. It is the closest planet to the sun. It is very, very hot on Mercury. And Mercury goes around very fast. That's why the Greeks called Mercury the messenger of the gods, because it moves so quickly. And of course, if you want to be the messenger of the gods, you have to move very quickly. So Mercury. Next, in order, away from the sun, is Venus. Now, Venus is an interesting planet. It's very similar to Earth, but it is the hottest planet. Why is it so hot? Because it's covered by thick clouds of gas. Astronomers sometimes think, and nobody can prove this, they just imagine, they have hypotheses, and they think that Venus may have been like Earth a long, long time ago. But as the atmosphere formed, because it was closer to the sun, there was a lot more heavy gases in the atmosphere that formed, and the sun rays heated up the surface of Venus, and it's so hot. Okay, next we have Earth. I'm getting too much detail. Okay, Earth, of course, is where we live. Earth is in the perfect zone for life. Not too close to the sun, not too far. We have enough sunlight, warmth generated by the sun. We also have water, liquid water on the surface, and so we have life on Earth. Earth has water, air, and 1 moon. Okay. Mars has the largest volcano. It's the next planet out. It has the largest volcano, and it has 2 moons, but they're very small, and they go around Mars, and Mars is smaller than the Earth. The next planet out is Jupiter. Jupiter is the largest planet with over 60 moons. Did you know that? Jupiter has a lot of moons going around it because it's so big. And in fact, Jupiter is so big, if it were a little bit bigger, I'm not sure how much bigger, it could have formed into a star. The gravitation could have made all that matter collapse, ignite in which is what the sun is, and we could have had 2 suns in our solar system. But then could life have formed on Earth if that were the case? We don't know. But there are cases where solar systems have 2 stars, sometimes 3 stars, circling around each other. Okay, anyway, the next planet out is Saturn. We talked about it with the ring around it. The next one is Uranus, or some people say Uranus because of certain jokes about Uranus. Okay, and it's a big planet. It's also what we call a gas giant. And Neptune is the same. It's also a giant. Now, I'm going too fast because I could talk forever about this. But Uranus has thin rings around it. So Saturn isn't the only planet with rings. Uranus has also thin rings around it. Neptune is a blue planet. It has 13 moons. So there are a lot of different moons around these big planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. They have also either moons or Uranus has thin rings around it. But it's very interesting. Astronomers are very interested in sending spaceships to these moons to see what the conditions are on those moons. Okay, anyway, that's a lot. I could talk for a very long time about this. Read about it. Look on the internet. Check it out. There's some fascinating things you can find out about the different planets in the solar system. Okay. Let's do the reading. Okay, in the reading, as usual, I'll read it out loud. You guys repeat after me or think about it in your mind. Okay, first of all, let's start with at night, because that's when we see the stars. So let's begin. At night, you can see many lights in the sky. The moon rotates around the earth in about 29 days. It also rotates on its axis about every 29 days. So the same side of the moon always faces the earth. We never see the other side of the moon. Interesting. Okay, we always see the same side because as it's orbiting, it's also turning. Okay, so that's interesting. We always see the same side of the moon. The moon reflects light from the sun. As the moon orbits around the earth, its shape seems to change. These shapes are called the phases of the moon. Well, you see the different shapes in these pictures, right? This is a crescent shape, a crescent. This is half moon and full moon. Full moon. Full moon, half moon, crescent moon. Crescent moon. Okay. The Earth is one of the 8 planets in our solar system. Not 9 anymore, just 8. Jupiter is the largest planet. More than 1,000 Earths could fit inside it. Jupiter has 62 moons. Wow, that's a lot of moons. The planet Saturn has a ring around it. You can see Jupiter's moons and Saturn's ring with a telescope. Many stars shine in the night sky. Stars are suns. They are very, very far away. We have to say very, 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 very far away. Okay. Some stars have planets orbiting them. Stars can make patterns in the sky, which are called constellations. Constellations. Okay, very good. That's the reading passage. Now, how is the information in the reading passage organized? Here we have the classic or very common organizational pattern of main idea and then supporting details. So what is the main idea of this passage? The main idea is the lights in the sky are the moon, planets, and stars. And that's interesting. I did want to mention that too because the lights in the sky, of course we know what the moon is. We can see it. It's very big. But a long time ago, many people thought that planets were also stars. They didn't know the difference. They just saw these lights moving around. Jupiter looks like a star in the night sky. It wasn't until much later when people had telescopes that they could figure out, and they also studied the motion, they could figure out, hey, these aren't stars, there are other planets in our solar system. Okay. So What are the details that support this main idea? The lights in the sky are the moon, planets, and stars. The first main detail is the moon, planets, and stars are all lights that beep in the sky. And we talked about that. And I mentioned that I used my cell phone as an example, right? Whether they're reflecting the light or they're giving the light off, what do? They shine. So, are lights that shine in the sky. Saturn is one of 8 planets in our beep. What do we call the group of planets, including Earth, our planet, that orbit the sun? We call that the solar system. And it's our solar system because we live here. Solar system. Solar system. 2 words. Oops. That's right. Solar system. So Saturn is one of 8 planets in our solar system. Saturn has a beep around it. What is it? Of course, it's a ring, but it's not a ring that you put on your finger. It's a ring that goes around a planet. Okay, Saturn has a ring around it, which you can see with a what? With a telescope. Telescope. So if you go out and buy a telescope, and you have to get away from the city, so you can see there's no other light around, and then look at the night sky and see what amazing things you can see through your telescope. Okay, next, some stars have beep orbiting them. So, of course, our star, Sol, that's the name of our sun, Sol, S-O-L, has 8 planets orbiting them. Now, as we look out to other stars, astronomers are able to detect other planets. So, some stars have planets orbiting them. Who lives there? What lives there? What are the planets like? These are very amazing or very mysterious questions that we have. And someday, of course, they're very, very, very far away. It's very hard to get to those planets. But it's a very interesting question. Okay. Stars can make patterns called what? We talked about this, right? Our ancestors looked up in the sky and they made shapes according to their stories, their myths, their legends, and they made the patterns, they made those groupings of the stars, and we call those constellations. 4 syllables. Constellations. We call those patterns constellations. And those are interesting also. You can check out books or charts on the internet to find out what the different constellations are and what are the names of the stars in those constellations. And it's interesting, some of the stars in the constellations have actually blown up and they will disappear after hundreds, thousands of years. Okay. So anyway, this is I'm sorry if I went too long. I gave too much detail, more than the lesson has in the book, but this is really an interesting field of study. And I encourage you to read books about astronomy, to go on the internet, check out, just type in Mars, type in Saturn, type in the moons of Jupiter, and find out all sorts of interesting and amazing details about the different planets and moons that are orbiting the same solar system that we are in. And also check out the interesting questions that astronomers have. And what are astronomers nowadays working on? What are their questions? And how are they going about trying to find the answers to those questions? It's a very fascinating and interesting subject. And apologies to Dr. Tyson. I was just joking. Okay, anyway, thanks for studying with me, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.